Hello everyone and welcome to another video on the Toliss Airbus A321. Today we're going to look at go-arounds. As I always say at the start of these, I am a real-world Airbus pilot, so hopefully this can give you guys a bit more perspective on your home simulations. But this is not for any real-world use, it's just for us to use in our simulators at home, and obviously slightly different with just one pilot of us and so on. But here we are, and today we're going to fly the arrival into Amsterdam, ILS runway 18 right, and we'll do the go-arounds in a couple of different ways and do a little bit of modifying as well to the go-around just to see some different techniques. So let's get started. So in the flight deck, as you can see, we are set up for the approach. Basically, we're at 5,000 feet and descending soon. I've got a slight arrival in here, Sugol, and then the ILS 18 right. If you need any help with the setup of the FMGC for the approach, I have a video which I'll provide a link to, which can guide you through it. But we've done our hat just to show you the current plan if you're following along at home. We're going to fly Sugol. I've modified this. This is probably what you'd expect to do in real life as opposed to the actual star chart. Basically, Sugol and then making a right turn, and then it would normally be vectors to the ILS 18 right, and so that's what we're going to be set up for. I've just got it drawn as a green line so I don't have to think about the vectoring. We'll pretend that's what we've been cleared to do by air traffic control. Platform for ILS 18 right is 2,000 feet. It's quite a low platform altitude, 2,000 feet. The elevation of Amsterdam is obviously low. It's 10 feet below sea level, quite unusual there. Radio nav, Victor Papa Bravo, ILS, and it's got a DME co-located with it, so it's all very straightforward. Progress page, we need to put in EHAM 18 right. Otherwise, we're going to be in a serviceable aeroplane. Performance page, I've already loaded up. It's a slightly lower QNH, warm with light south easterly winds, and you see the minimum at 190 feet, so 10 feet below sea level, so that's 200 feet above the runway. This time we're going for a config 3 landing, and I'll explain why in a minute. So I've got config 3 in the MCDU, and I pushed it up there for landing flap, and that gives us our memo GPLS flap 3. Great. For the go-around, we can't change this at the moment, that's a bug. I would normally change that to the aeroplane go-around platform altitude, but we can't do that for now. So before we fly this go-around, let's have a look at the coding for it, which is certainly something you would check in real life. So you'd want to make sure that the airplane is going to fly what you want, and the Airbus is very good. It has a coded in go-around for us. So if we look on here, we need to turn right as soon as practical, but not below 400 feet. So we've got this little 400 feet above to intercept the radial 280 to Sierra Papa Lima. So the Sierra Papa Lima VOR we can see there, and it's got intercept, so it's going to use 188, so a slight right turn, and then intercept, and now we see course 280, track 280. Climb to 2,000 feet, and you've got to cross 7.5 miles at or above 2,000 feet. At 2,000 feet, which is the level of altitude for the go-around. Climb to 2,000 feet and be level by 7.5 Sierra Papa Lima. Okay, great. Terrain isn't an issue. It's 1,700 feet and 2,300 feet that direction, so we know that at 2,000 feet will be above the terrain. So you would check that carefully, make sure it's loaded, and it is, which is great. So the airplane needs to be flown in the go-around in a set order, and the key to a go-around in the Airbus is to make sure you stick to that order. So don't get muddled up or start mixing things around. It's quite simple, and essentially we're going to do three things. First off, I'm going to fly it with the autopilot in, just to make it very clear. And you can fly the go-around with the autopilot, absolutely no problem. So when you decide you're going to go around, don't rush into it. Give yourselves a second to think about what you're doing. Do I have the correct altitude set up? Is the airplane really ready? Am I ready? Of course, there may be a reason you have to go around immediately, for example, from a bulk landing. But if you have time, take a second to make sure you know what you're doing. And then it's quite simple. You're going to call go-around flaps. You're going to move the thrust levers to toga. So these go all the way forwards, just to the stops. So toga. The airplane will automatically then go into man toga SRS go-around track. So these FMAs will all change so that you'll get toga thrust straight away in the Airbus when you set into toga. This will change to SRS. It would have been in the glide slope mode, and you'll get the go-around track. The other pilot, or in this case us, will have to move the flaps now. So we're doing a flap 3 approach, so they go one stage up. So we're doing a flap 3 approach, we'll move them to flap 2. If we're doing flap full, we'd move them to flap 3 for the go-around. So we're going to go from flap 3 to flap 2, because it's a flap 3 landing. And then we'll be climbing away. Once the other pilot is happy we're climbing away, they'll say positive climb, and then we'll ask for the landing gear up. And the landing gear comes up. And then that's it. It's very simple. From there, we'll be climbing just like a takeoff. So we'll have our green F and S speeds on here. We'll keep climbing as we pass through, and we can see what altitude it's going to accelerate at. About 1,500 feet above the runway again. As we pass through this altitude, the airplane will say leave a climb. It will change from SRS to climb mode. It will lower the nose and start accelerating. We bring the thrust levers 2 clicks back to the climb gate to engage the auto thrust again, and let it carry on. Now, it will be in go-around track. In modern Airbuses, or in modified Airbuses, it will say, it will automatically go into nav mode. So once you do all that, the airplane will fly this blue string for you. If I can bring it up again, let me just go back. So it'll fly this. In this Toliss A321 at the moment, it appears it will simply carry on in go-around track, which is just straight ahead. The go-around track is a straight line from whatever you were on at the time. So to get it to fly this leg, we simply need to push nav. So we go to 1 dot, which is pushing in on the heading knob, push that, and it will change to nav mode, and it will fly that string, which is great. So that's enough talking about it. Let's go and fly the approach so I can show you a bit more clearly. Okay, here we are on final approach then, slightly off the localizer, it is correcting. And I'm going to pretend that air traffic control has cleared us to go around to 4,000 feet. So as soon as we get glide slope start, we're going to arm the correct altitude in here. So there's 4,000 feet armed, because that's now above us and we want it ready, because if we go around, the airplane will capture the altitude in that window. So great, I've got it set. We also need the flight plan to be sequenced. So I need the next waypoint to be the runway, or whichever point, it could be a 4-mile point, something like that. So today it is sequenced, there's 18 right. If it isn't, you need to clear through, which I'll talk about another time. If you've flown through your string in the correct order, then it should probably be sequenced. Great, so here we go, looking like we'll be stable at our 1,000 foot point. So I'm going to do as I said earlier, it'll be thrust levers to toga, check the FMAs change to as expect, man toga SRS go around track. Flaps will come in 1 stage, 3 to 2, and then positive climb, gear up. And then we'll keep climbing up to 4,000 feet, as I said, with a normal acceleration at 1,500 feet. So we go 1,000 feet, we were stable. So why might we end up going around from here? Well, likely reasons would be air traffic telling us the plane on the runway in front of us hasn't vacated in time, or maybe it's stuck. It could be you've had a wind check, maybe the tailwind is out of limit, or the crosswind's out of limit, something like that. Maybe the cabin crew aren't ready because they had a late warning, or there's something going on in the cabin. Or perhaps you were unstable, perhaps you didn't get configured in time because you were busy focused on something else, which is what we try and avoid, obviously. But if that's the case, then we would go around. So I'm going to leave the PFD up and have a look at these FMAs as we do it. So go around flaps, man toga SRS, go around track, auto thrust blue, flaps to 2. Now we have a positive climb, gear up. And here we are, climbing in toga, SRS, and here we are, go around track. And now I don't want to be in go around track, I want to fly the go around. So I'm going to push 1 dot, and it goes to nav. Here we go, passing 1,500 feet, airplane starts to accelerate. Thrust levers to climb, thrust climb, open climb, auto thrust. Airplane is turning right on our go around track as we hoped, and our 4,000 feet is still armed. We're above the F speed, so I can bring the flaps to flaps 1. And all we wait for now is to get above S speed. 1,000 feet to go to our level off. Okay, above the S speed, accelerating, flaps to 0. And there we go, we've flown the turn, we're accelerating. There could be a speed limit in the turn in some airports, especially if there's terrain, so you need to be careful. This speed could be below green dot, in which case you'd need to keep the flaps out to some extent in order to fly that turn. So how would we reconfigure for the approach here? Well, you run your after takeoff climb checklists, but essentially the Airbus is very clever. I can activate the approach phase again, check all the data is still correct, run the after takeoff climb checklist, and I'd run the approach checklist, something like that, depending on which procedures you're using. And then you can head downwind for your next approach. You'll see it's all coded in here, and the flight plan has the arrival around to the ILS 18 right in there. So there we go. So let's have a look at a replay of that approach. I want you to have a look at the FMAs, that's the flight mode enunciators on the top of the PFD. So you see they've changed Mantoga SRS go around track, and that target speed is now slightly higher than I'd expect. To be honest, I'd expect it to be near the approach, but that's still reasonable, and it will climb at that target speed in SRS mode, just like on a takeoff, until we accelerate. It is very important you check those FMAs have gone as you expect when you go around to make sure you're going to get the level off and the correct climb. Okay, so here we are again, descending to our platform altitude of 2,000 feet. Let's make sure we have the approach phase activated, which we do. We're on the correct QNH 1009, very important, and the radio altimeter backs that up, 2,000 feet, 2,000 feet. As I said before in another video, you want to be flap 2, or I would certainly want to be flap 2 and reducing the speed by 2,000 feet. But it's slightly different here because our platform is 2,000, so we'll level. So by the time I leave 2,000 feet on the ILS, I'm going to have the gear down at least flap 2, but probably configuring at that point. Anyway, talking about the go-around then. So this time with a platform altitude, with a go-around altitude of 2,000 feet, which is seen here, 2,000 feet, we have to be careful because it's a very low level off. So the airplane is going to keep climbing with a lot of thrust, toga thrust, until we pass 1,500 feet, which I can see here. At that point, it's probably going to go straight into outstar and lower the nose and accelerate. And it may do that. It'll probably be an outstar possibly before you've even changed to this, before you've even accelerated. So that will mean that you're going to have a lot of thrust and a chance of overspeeding the flaps. So you'll need to be very aware of the flaps, and certainly the retraction may need to happen quite swiftly. It's also possible that if we go into outstar with a high rate of climb, the airplane will fly a certain intercept rate of descent, or rate of climb in this case, and that could be quite a high rate of climb. So if you're still trying to climb at that high rate of climb in outstar mode, with the flaps at 3 and the gear will be up, but the flaps 3 and the thrust back at climb thrust, the airplane may actually start to struggle. So you have to be aware of your speed as well. You don't just bring the thrust back to climb thrust straight away just because. You need to be ready for it. So let's have another look and see what happens. I'm also going to do a flap full approach this time to show you the difference. We're going to go from flap full to flap 3, and then in acceleration, as soon as we're above the F speed, we go from flap 3 to flap 1, just as we would on a takeoff. Okay, so here we are on the ILS, glide slope, localizer, both autopilots engaged, and the go-around altitude, we're going to leave at 2,000 feet, which is the correct one for this procedure. So this time, I'll do the flap full go-arounds, and we'll see how difficult it is to level off at that 2,000 feet, and how careful we have to be with the flap overspeed. Again, same reasons for going around in this sort of circumstance. It could be air traffic, aeroplane in front, us unstable. Another thing you could ask is, what if we went around from below 2,000 feet but above 1,500 feet or 1,490? So if we're above that altitude and we go around, let's say we went around from 1,600 feet, well, the airplane, once we'd do exactly the same actions, but as soon as we're climbing, the airplane would ask us to go leave a climb. It would automatically put you into the acceleration phase. So it's quite simple, but you still do those initial actions in the same way if you are below this 2,000 feet. And in the next approach, I'll talk about what to do if you were above it. Okay, so let's imagine air traffic send us around now. So we've got sequence flight plan. We've got the go-around altitude in. Let's go. Mantoga SRS, go around track. Auto thrust is blue. Flaps are going to go to 3. We see a positive climb. Gear up. Okay, we're climbing. All looking good. Go around track. We wanted a nav, so 1 dot, push for nav. There's outstar, so we're already there, as you can see, and we're already accelerating. So let's get that thrust to climb to engage the auto thrust. Speed, outstar, nav, auto thrust. Now let's get those flaps to 1, 3, 2, 1, which is where we want them. We'll now monitor the airplane, make sure we make that right turn here. Yes, we are. Excellent. And then it's the same again. We'll get above airspeed and accelerate. So it happens slightly faster with that lower level off. You just need to be aware of it because the speed starts to move towards your flap limit. Okay, so for this approach, we're going to look at what we would do if we are going to go around from above the go-around altitude. So let's pretend that we're being vectored by air traffic control, and today they make us intercept the ILS from 3,000 feet, but the go-around altitude is 2,000 feet, so it's beneath us. Well, from here we could do a normal go-around, but obviously that would mean that we end up climbing away from the altitude we want to be at, 2,000 feet, so we would need to get re-cleared to another altitude or fix it later. Another option that can make our life easier is a discontinued approach, where we simply stop the airplane descending and we level off at 2,000 feet and go from there. So that's what we'll look at now. Some key things to this are you need to make sure that you are above this altitude that you've set here. So when you intersect the glide slope on this altitude window, we always select the go around altitude so it's ready, and that must be beneath us to use this. If we are below it, we have to do the full go around, even if we're a little bit below it, just like we saw earlier, in order to get the airplane to sequence properly. But if we are above it, what we can do is simply say I'm going to cancel the approach. We'll be in glide slope and localizer. I'm going to press the approach push button and the airplane will revert to basic mode, so it will go to heading and vertical speed. Once it's done that, it will say out blue 2,000 because that's beneath us and it will be there. If our altitude is accidentally left at 3,000 or left at an altitude that's above us, we will go into vertical speed, but there'll be no out blue, so very important you check you have that. If there's no out blue, the airplane will just keep descending in vertical speed all the way towards the ground, which is obviously very dangerous and not what we want to do. And that's it really. From there, it's worth keeping in mind the normal go-around flow. So once you've cancelled the approach, you press the approach push button and we've gone into heading vertical speed. You check that you level off and then start thinking about the go-around. Okay, so do we need to move the flaps? Do we need to move the gear? Do we need to move the thrust or the speed? Do we need to accelerate? And so on. So let's have a look at that now. So why might we end up going around from out here? Well, it's similar reasons to earlier. It could be air traffic control have decided we're not going to fit in the sequence properly. It could be that we have a problem with the airplane. So maybe we want to go and take the airplane somewhere else, make sure it's set up correctly and we run the right procedures before we begin our approach, that sort of thing. You don't want to rush into approach if you're not ready. It could be that we are high on the profiler, we don't think we're going to make it down in time for the glide slope, things like that. Okay, so we're now reaching our glide slope intercept. We can see the glide slope starting to come down. About 9 miles would be normal from 3,000 feet. I'm going to put out flap 2. There are some strange things about going around flap 1, but for a discontinued approach, it's not relevant. And this way, we'll have the drag out, so we got the extra drag from these flaps, so that as we're on the glide slope, the airplane won't accelerate. It will actually probably decelerate unless you've got a strong tailwind, something like that. Here we go, glide slope start. So we're on the glide slope. So now I'm going to set our go around altitude beneath us to 2,000 feet. And here we can see on the PFD and check it. There you go, 2,000 blue. It's armed and ready to capture when we discontinue. So now, if air traffic were to tell us to go around, I can look at the situation, take a second to assess it, unless there's another reason air traffic tell you. They may tell you to go around instantly, in which case you need to do something a bit quicker. And I can see that it's beneath me. So I can simply say, right, I'm going to cancel the approach. So cancel approach. I'm going to push the approach push button and we see immediately the airplane reverts to vertical speed. Out blue is capturing 2,000 feet beneath us, so that's great. That's what we want to do. That's the go around altitude, and it's gone into heading. That's fine for now. I'm going to make sure it levels off properly, and in the meantime, I don't want it to be in heading really, because if we were flying the standard missed approach, I'm going to push for nav. And there we go. It'll continue flying the green line. Speed mode is armed, or active, so we're going to level off and the thrust will come on to keep us at F speed, which is great. So this is a perfectly safe situation to be in. Now I'm going to monitor the level off to make sure that it has actually worked. Out star, great. So we're not descending towards the terrain anymore. Now let's think about the other things we'd have done. Would have retracted the flaps a stage. Well, we're flap 2 and F speed. I'm not going to retract them now because we're not accelerating, but I could start to accelerate, couldn't I? So let's put in 200 knots. There we go, 200 for now, and we'll see where that takes us. We don't have a positive climb, cool, so let's leave the gear up, or bring it up if it wasn't, because we may have put the gear out early for some reason. Maybe we were trying to slow down. So now we'll check that the gear is up, which it is. So it's just like our go around earlier. We thought about the flaps, thought about the gear, we've got our correct modes in. Let's accelerate to 220 knots. We're above the F speed, let's bring the flaps to 1. And now we're above the S speed, let's bring it to 0. You could leave that flap 1 and fly around like that. It does use extra fuel, obviously, so that'll be a discussion or a thought process to have. But by using speed mode and controlling the airplane ourselves, we can work our way through it methodically. So in the real airplane, I would now expect it to reach the missed approach point and turn right onto this track. But I've practiced this earlier and I know it doesn't. So you do have to be ready to intervene. If we look at our missed approach procedure, it's actually turn right as soon as practicable, but not below 400 feet to intercept the radial 280 and do not overshoot 240 Sierra Papa Lima. So to do that, I don't want to overshoot, and I'm going quite fast now, so let's get that turn going. We're above 400 feet, so we can, to intercept the 280. As I said, I would expect it to be able to do it in nav, but we don't want to overshoot it, and we've accelerated, so it's worth us getting it ready ourselves. So let's go to let's do 230 for now. I've got this Sierra Papa Lima VOR, so I'll soon see the tail of the needle. In terms of tracking VORs, I'll do another video on that for tracking the different needles, because they need a little bit of explaining. And there we go. So you just got to be ready to intervene and fly the missed approach as appropriate. It may not sequence for you. I hope that video has been useful for you. It's another topic to cover. Obviously, it's not comprehensive. There are a few different sort of missed approaches that could come up, and hopefully over time I'll get the chance to cover those in other videos. That certainly is the plan. Do keep the feedback coming and the questions. It's great to have the interaction. Thank you as always for watching, and hopefully see you again in another video soon.